If ever there was the perfect holiday spot for fishermen, it's got to be this place, Port Douglas in far north Queensland.
I reckon this place is to fishermen what a sausage factory is to a bull terrier. Paradise. You can do everything here from just throwing a line off a jetty to going out where the big boys play.
This is Udo's idea of a fishing holiday. This is both the accommodation and the fishing boat. While my idea of a fishing holiday is something more along the lines of this as the fishing boat, and what about this for accommodation?
That's because Peter Evans travels like Madonna on tour.
Either way, we're doing this fishing holiday my way.
The big advantage of going out on a proper fishing boat with the experts is that these guys know the area. They know where all the fish are and they've got all the bits and bobs, so all I have to do is worry about the catching and let Pete worry about the cooking. We're going out to do some reef fishing with a bloke called Chainsaw, who I reckon is living proof that work is for people who have never discovered fishing. Chainsaw, you got a pretty good job. Did they actually pay you for this?
Well, I've got to pay myself for this. It's a hard part. It's the best office in the world.
I've always dreamt about being a skipper on a boat like this, and I mean, I guess there's an element of hard work, but you must love coming out here every time.
Well, as I said, it's the best office in the world.
Now, Rob, we've got a beautiful day today. What can we expect out here?
As we get into the reef area, we'll look up in the shallows for the coral trout and a few other species like spangled emperor, and tend to hang around there.
Hedging your bets. Just over the back or over the side?
Straight over the back.
I don't like using hand lines. Hand lines is ancient traditional stuff, I guess, and I just don't like fishing with hand lines. They get all over your feet and knot up and stuff. But up here, most of the reef fishing people do use hand lines.
Now, what's going to happen with these fish? Normally, when it hits the bottom, they'll bite straight away.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice bit of weight there.
Just watch your foot.
See, this is better than pulling off a piece of rope, don't you reckon, Pete?
Whee. Well, it certainly looks a little bit more dramatic. How deep is it here?
It should be about 32 metres, Rob. 34 metres. Okay. Yeah. So when it hits the bottom, just lift it up probably half a metre.
Yep.
And then just hang on.
What do you think this might be, Rob?
I reckon you probably got one of the trevally species on there.
When you feel bites, like a decent bite, try and hook the fish.
Okay. There we go.
Got him?
Yep.
Ew. You still on, Pete?
Yep. Straight away, I love this. Within a minute.
I'm hungry.
Got to catch it first.
Where is he? Oh, so there's a golden one.
Hang on, I'll come down and give you your hand.
I've got it.
There it is. I can take the hook straight out.
It's a bludger, actually, bludger trevally.
Look at that colour, Pete.
Perfect. Now that's a smallmouth nanogai. Lovely fish.
It's a little bit more than a smallmouth nanogai, mate. It's going to be our lunch.
How colourful is it? Beautiful.
There's nothing better than catching your own fish, especially on the Great Barrier Reef, and being able to cook it. And the dish I'm going to do is sweet and sour fish. It's a really basic traditional recipe of China, and usually have it with pork or even chicken. Now, the smallmouth nanogai that I've caught, I've been told has a similar taste to chicken. What I always do when I get a new fish that I haven't tried before is once I get the fillet off, I've got a beautiful fillet here, I've chopped these into nice little chunks, is I actually slice a little bit off and just taste it raw. Most fish you can eat raw, and just let you know how salty it is, how sweet it is. And this is beautiful. It's part of the sea perch family, and it'll work really nice with this dish. You want something that has quite a bit of texture that can stand up to the deep frying that I'm going to do. I've got some peanut oil. I'm just going to heat that up till it's smoking, and in the meantime, I'm going to flour this fish. Corn flour, plain flour, it doesn't really matter, and just coat them. Now, the reason we coat the fish with flour is two reasons. One, to protect the beautiful flesh of the fish, so it just doesn't get fried, and two is to seal in the flavour of the fish. Just shake it in your hand to get the excess off. You don't want too much flour in this dish. That way, it doesn't mask the flavour of the fish. They actually look a little bit like Turkish delight, but don't be fooled, don't eat them like that. So I've got a wok on with some hot oil at about 180, 190 degrees. I've used peanut oil. You can use any oil you want, but peanut oil just adds to that touch of Asian flavour. Place the pieces of fish in, and they should take about 2 to 3 minutes to cook all over. Then what we're going to do is actually take them out of the oil, put them on some absorbent paper to drain the excess oil off, and that way they won't overcook and you're going to get nice juicy chunks of fish. I'm just going to turn these over. The main thing with this is you've got to have hot oil. Basically you're deep frying the fish, okay? So you want to deep fry them so they're not all the way cooked through. Sort of halfway, so only 2 minutes. That way they don't overcook and they don't become dry and chewy in your mouth. Once they're nice and golden, scoop them out and pop them on your absorbent paper. This is actually a great way of cooking fish because it does seal in all the flavour and keeps it really nice and moist. If your oil's not hot enough, it'll go mushy, it'll absorb all the oil, whereas the flour sort of acts as a barrier to protect the fish. We're going to get rid of this oil and start the next part of the recipe. So the next part of the dish is to cook the vegetables and the sauce. So in with the oil again, I only need a little bit. Now to start with, I add some onions. Now these are little baby pearl onions. You can use the bottom of spring onions. Just any onion is fine. They always use onions in sweet and sour sauce, so just finely sliced or nice chunks. It doesn't really matter. I'm going for the chunks today. You fry that off. These are just normal baby onions. They're quite sweet. And when you smell them, when you see them, it just reminds you of a Chinese restaurant. You want to keep cooking it until the onion starts to caramelise and get a really nice colour to it, which adds to the flavour of the dish. The next thing we add is some sweet and sour sauce. It's just supermarket brand. It would take me too long to try to make this for you at home and I would never do it myself, so why bother? Add some of that. Always have vegetables for Chinese food. Today I'm just using snow peas. But again, this recipe, it's mainly about the sauce, it's mainly about the ingredients you're using, which is the fish. I've got some very thinly sliced red pepper, cucumber and ginger. And what I've done is pickled it. And what I mean by pickling is a little bit of vinegar. I've used rice vinegar for this, some salt, some sugar and a little bit of water. Now I've just let them sit for about 20 to 30 minutes. It softens the vegetables up, but it also imparts this beautiful flavour into the pickling mixture. And I actually add the juice into the sauce. Instead of adding water into the sauce, I add that. What I find is these are quite sweet when you get them from the supermarket, so by pickling my own vegetables, I get that really nice balance of sweet and sour, which is what I'm after. I'm going to dress the fish with this once it's cooked. So then you get that beautiful sauce starting to thicken up. You don't have to add any corn flour to this because the sauce is quite thick itself. We reduce this down. So that's at the right consistency now. So now I add back in the fish. Some rice, sir. Oh, beautiful. Thanks, mate. I've got some garlic chives. Now, I'm using garlic chives because I haven't used any garlic in this recipe. And traditionally it calls for a little bit of garlic, but I find the garlic chives not only look good, but they taste great too when they're in season. I've got some spring onions, just the tops of spring onions. The thing I love about Chinese food is just full of goodness, it's full of flavour, and it's full of colour. It's visually stunning, and it's such a great dish to be able to share with people. So I've got some jasmine rice there, Udo bought for me, which is lovely. I'll pour that over the top. Then I just finish it with those pickled vegetables, and they add a lovely contrast to the dish, because these are at room temperature, while everything else is hot. And there you have sweet and sour smallmouth nanagai. You ready, Uds?
Around.
Here you go, mate. Thanks, mate. Choppies. Choppies. How is it, mate?
Mate,
You're a bloody good cook.
Our accommodation is anchored in what's known as a green zone, or a no-take zone in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. These areas make up about 5% of the reef, so you can't fish here, and that's a great thing, because it means that these zones will produce more fish, bigger fish, and keep us catching fish for a long time to come. But the areas that Chainsaw is taking us to are definitely not green zones, and you can see the results of the protected areas with virtually every cast.
So why do we do this? So it doesn't cut your hand, is that why?
The thing is, what you can do as soon as the fish takes off, it's dropped.
Really.
Okay.
You're not going to get it wrapped around your fingers. You're not going to do anyone any damage. All you got to do is ease them up.
Right, keep that hand on. Put this hand on.
Mm-hmm.
Pull him up until you're comfortable.
You can see some colour down there.
Up over the top like so. And if he goes, just let him go like that, see?
Okay.
Just like a shock absorber.
Yep.
Keeping tension on the fish, but no extra tension in what you need to pull him up, okay?
What sort of fish do you think this is?
I think it's probably another trevally. He's going like a trevally.
You can see him. He's there.
I'm sweating and I'm not doing anything.
I've never had to use gloves with this. There he is. There's no use in wrapping line because you can always drop it.
Yep.
Now if he's having a bit of a run, let him go. No problems. Up top.
It's not that small, is it?
Oh, it's a rabbit. Another bludger.
Might be the one you let go before it's...
There's a whole clan here. So this is lovely. Hand lines.
See? I'm not into him.
And yeah, lift him straight up and over.
Okay.
Frying pan snapper.
It's a dead set snapper.
A frying pan snapper.
Frying
What's the
pan.
first? Does that mean it's good to cook with?
They're actually quite good eating.
The dish I'm going to make is called fish in acqua pazza. Now, acqua pazza is Italian for crazy water. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. Now, the fish we're using today is called the long spine snapper or the frying pan snapper. Now, it gets its name because it only grows to 50 centimetres in length, so it's a perfect fit for the frying pan. Pretty smart, whoever came up with that. Because I'm doing a whole fried fish, I'm going to put 3 incisions on each side. This just helps the fish cook evenly, gets a lot of flavour into it. Now, I've got a pan on. It's nice and hot. A little bit of oil. And the fish straight in. That should take about 3 to 4 minutes on that side. I'm not going to add anything into that pan until we turn the fish over, otherwise my ingredients will burn. Now that looks ready. We'll flip that over, let it brown on the other side. Now I can add the other ingredients. I've got a long banana chilli and about 5 cloves of garlic. And what I've done is I've confit them, which means slow cooking in some olive oil. I've heated some olive oil up in a saucepan, dropped the garlic and chilli in there, and turned the oil off and let it sit for about 2 or 3 hours. The reason I do this, it makes the garlic and the chilli really mellow, not only in texture, but in flavour. It makes it round out so it doesn't overpower the fish. Next thing we're going to pop in is some cherry tomatoes and some grape tomatoes. I just think anything with tomato, garlic, chilli, basil, just makes me hungry. So next is some basil leaves. You can be quite rough with them. I've just got a few stems in there. I've got a few olives, black olives, green olives, doesn't really matter. As long as they're marinated, got a little bit of flavour to them. Now for the water. As I was saying, acqua pazza means crazy water in Italian. Originally, the Italians, I think the Europeans, with some of their seafood, they actually used to cook it in the seawater. Now, I believe it's illegal to do that in Australia in a commercial kitchen. So the alternative is to use some sparkling mineral water. It's carbonated, it's gaseous. We add that to the pan, and it starts to sizzle and starts to foam. It actually looks quite crazy. Hopefully you don't go crazy after you eat it. Maybe I'll give it to Udo and we'll see what happens, but he was already crazy to begin with. In with the salt. And a touch of pepper. Now I'm just going to let that reduce down for about 3 or 4 minutes until it becomes a nice sauce consistency and the fish gets cooked through. Now the fish is cooked. I can tell by the incisions I've put in there, they've gone white. So I'm going to transfer it to my plate. It smells great. And just pour the ingredients over the top. To finish, I put a squeeze of lemon juice, put it in at the end so that you get the full perfume effect from it, and a little drizzle of olive oil. It looks great with the sauce. Now, I know Ed's pretty hungry, but it's like a long way to swim. I think I might just eat it myself. thing that freaks me out when I go on holidays is what am I going to eat for lunch? Because I always get a bit scared buying things from takeaway shops or places I don't know. So what I tend to do is make something in the morning and then bring it out with us. Today, the dish I'm going to do is called vitello tonato, which is an Italian dish, which is basically translates to veal and tuna. And,
Pete, I'm going for a dive, mate.
all right, mate. As I say, it translates into veal with tuna. But to put a little bit of a spin on it, I'm actually going to serve it in a bread roll, because there's nothing actually better than a good sandwich or a good bread roll. So, all I'm going to do is open the bread roll up. Now, I always take a knife with me wherever I go. I always take my chef's knife. It's like the American Express card. I can't leave home without it. So that goes into my luggage, not the hand luggage, because they try to steal it off me. So next, we add the veal. Now, this has been slow roasted. What I've done is heated up a fry pan, sealed it on all sides, and then popped it in an oven on about 100 degrees for about half an hour. That way it cooks really nice, really slowly, and it retains all the juices. Next is the tuna. And the tuna part of the dish is actually tin tuna. Now, we're in a bit of a green zone in the Great Barrier Reef, and what I mean by green zone is we're not allowed to do any fishing here. So this is sort of an eco-friendly way to do it. We're still eating fish, but we haven't caught it from this area. Now, I always use it in olive oil because I find any saltwater fish that's in spring water just doesn't make sense to me. In with some cracked pepper, in with some sea salt. Next is some preserved lemon. Now, you can make your own preserved lemons or just buy it in a jar. I always just buy it in a jar, but just make sure you use the rind and not the pulp. It's quite overpowering, so only a tiny bit, and I've just chopped that finely. Next is some capers, just a teaspoon. We put an anchovy in there. I'm going to break this up with my fork later on. A little bit of chilli. Not traditional, but I just love a little bit of heat with my food. Next, I've got mayonnaise or aioli. What I tend to do is find a deli wherever I'm staying, if there is one, and go to them and buy my mayonnaise. If it's got a little hint of lemon in it, that's even better. We stir that around, break up the anchovy, break up the tuna. You sort of want a nice even consistency. And we just place that on, and it's going to taste fantastic. Now, to finish off, we've just got some watercress, and you can use rocket, lettuce, whatever you like. Now, Oods, lunch is ready, and that's my take. You hungry?
Yeah.
Now, tell me what you think of this, but make sure you don't go swimming for an hour afterwards, mate.
It's an old wives' tale. Okay, so that's lunch. Let's just see if we can catch dinner. And the skipper just told me that there's some big bait fish showing on the depth sounder, so we should stand by for some serious action. Oh, we're on! This is a gimbal or a bucket, which is used to not just protect my tackle, but to allow the upwards and downwards motion. I'm going to put a bit more drag on that because this fish, it's got a bit of power. Well, this would be huge. Oh, lost him.
Yeah, it's only 15 kilo line.
Yeah. Oh, well, you can't get them all. Oh, we're on again. Second up for the... Ah! I'll go a bit easier on his head this time.
Just leave it on the strike drag, eh?
What happened last time, Oots?
I probably pulled a bit harder and they pulled the hooks out of its mouth. They've got soft heads and mouths, so if you pull too hard on them, this is only 15 kilo breaking strain, meaning if 15 kilos or more is placed on it, there's a possibility that it's going to snap. That you shouldn't put too much pressure on the fish, so it might take a bit longer to get it in, tire it out. And
Tire you out or tire it out?
Well, tires me out as well, yeah. Have we got any colour, chainsaw?
I'm just worried about that, mate. Hang on.
You right there?
Mate, I'm buggered.
It's the least I've heard you speak for ages. You must be concentrating.
It's a big fish, whatever it is, it's big. What Rob's just done,
Yeah.
he's changed direction and moved the fish, or moved the angle of the boat, changing the fish's direction and confusing it to a certain degree and making it move, and it's actually worked well because it's coming up higher now.
Got colour, he's a big fish. Big fish.
It's not a shark then?
Nah, looks to me like it might be a doggy even.
That's a big fish, mate. I was up there.
Huge.
It's bigger than you.
Colour there.
Look at that.
Oh, here it is. And I'm going to put my sunnies on this.
What's the albino whale called that's been going past Sydney?
Hell no way, you got a hunchback.
Yeah, he's coming right up. Look at that.
There he is.
Here he comes.
There he comes. Look at the snout.
Holy. That's a big Spaniard. Big Spaniard.
How long you been fighting this for it?
It feels like a day. It feels like a day and a half, but I know it hasn't been dark since I hooked it.
His turn, he'll come up this time. Watch him.
Yep. Got it. I'm going to grab the other gaff.
Get the other gaff.
Oh my God.
Watch out, guys. It's going to come over with teeth.
I'd say that's the biggest mackerel I've ever caught.
I'd say you've got a monster.
Sorry, mate.
You'll feed a bloody...
Hold it out, will you?
I feel absolutely drained, and to be honest with you, I've never felt this tired. I've never been this happy or this hungry. So, Pete, maybe you could whip something up for a poor old mate.
I could probably feed a village with that, mate.
Do you know that the male 15 kilo record for this fish in Queensland is 34.47 and the world is 38.25? That will go close.
I reckon I've broken a record.
So now the race was on to get back to port and officially weigh up Udo's huge Spanish mackerel before I got too dehydrated and lost too much body weight. And this is when we found out why our boat skipper was called Chainsaw. I've never seen anyone chop through waves like this before.
Yep.
Come on, Uds.
You gonna hit?
No, you're going to just make it. Whoop.
80 pound.
Well, that's 80 pounds.
60. If it's to there, it's 60 pound.
How do you know? Oh, it's 60.
Yeah, just give it a bit of a move up and down to make sure it's loose in the scales.
Yeah.
All right, and then...
60,
62 pound. Or 63 pound.
which is 30.
What is that?
Ooh, 62.2 pounds to a kilo.
We could be here all night. Officially, Udo's Spanish mackerel was 28.5 kilos, 6 kilos short of the record on a 15 kilogram line.
Well, it's not quite a record, but I'll tell you what, it's a record in my books.
It's still a massive catch. In fact, so massive that after we got back, it took Udo 3 weeks of physio to get over our supposed holiday.
Yeah, it was a great holiday, but I still reckon that would have been a world record if Chainsaw hadn't borrowed the bloody scales from Noah's Ark.